Welcome back. New year, technically new us. We've already had the New Year episode, but I digress. We're going to have more people on today. That's what makes this a New Year, New Us episode. This is the review, season 2, episode 6. Yes, episode 6 as I look at my rundown. It's hard to keep track of the numbers, guys, especially after the weekend of college basketball we just saw. Happy to have you in. I'm Brendon Hodges, as always, here on what is turning out to be a wild weekend in more ways than one. If you catch my drift there, you know I'm a football guy. You get it. We talk college basketball here, though. Maybe we'll throw in some football stuff because our guest is repping a certain football team that I admire very closely. But let's go ahead and get started, all right? So there is this saying that has started to peeve me a little bit. And there's a reason for that. I, in college, was a media and cultural studies major. Forget the whole cultural studies part for a second. Media meaning like filmography, cinematography, stuff like that. There was very little of that, but I still got to do a lot of it just on my own time in college, right? And in watching sports critically, analytically, if you may, as a play-by-play commentator or producer or whatever, you're looking at how the camera angles are utilized and how they are used to create the narrative, the story of the game. What peeves me, though, is when somebody says, you couldn't have scripted this or Hollywood couldn't have come up with this. Yes, they can, and they have. It's called Hoosiers, Glory Road, and Coach Carter. I get it. In the heat of the moment, you're always thinking, oh my God, nobody could have seen a 16 seed beating a 1. Well, now you can because it's happened. Everything that can happen has happened in college basketball. And that's not a knock on it because you never know when it will. And that's what makes it so exciting. But let's not get this twisted. Sports aren't scripted. Moments of great accomplishment, though, whether it's, say, a scoring title, an all-time record for wins, points, assists, whatever, they can be scripted per se, as in, or you have a pretty good idea that this guy, this coach, will get this milestone at this time in a certain season. And you prepare for that, but it's not scripted. This is real life, guys. So don't say basketball can be written up in a script or that it can't be scripted because, we expect upsets to happen. We may not expect a certain upset to happen. And then I guess you could argue the saying is justified, but upsets happen. We don't get numb to them because it's always a nice little breath of fresh air. We saw plenty of them this past weekend. Granted, it's the conference college season, so it means a little bit more to teams. Are they as big of an upset as you would expect? Maybe we'll discuss that today, maybe not. It is not scripted per se, but we can expect that upsets will happen, whether it's regular season, whether it's tournament, whether it's whatever. So a shorter rant today, still a rant. This isn't the movies, guys. Leave that to whatever the hell that actor's name is in Glory Road, or Samuel L. Jackson, or I think John Voight is the head coach in Hoosiers, and Matt Waldman, who's joining us now, can probably tell me if he is. He's our guest today, repping the Eagles sweatshirt, unmuting himself as we speak. Matt, what's your favorite basketball movie?
I feel like you mentioned some really good ones there. But I feel like it's got to go back to Hoosiers. It's kind of the classic, and Glory Road's up there too. I actually watched Glory Road for a project in college one time for my own. It was on kind of diversity in film and things of that nature. So, but yeah, as Hoosiers is the classic one. It kind of sets the stage, I think, for a lot of the ones that have come since. But Glory Road is a very close second. I absolutely love that movie.
I have a former grad school classmate who works at the station in El Paso, from El Paso, says they watch that movie as like a history lesson. And that shocked me because I was like, there are so many inaccuracies in that movie in regards to like like certain actors playing people, or just like they literally ran through a bunch of teams and they made the game super close because why not? Like I don't know. Great movie. I loved it as a kid. I don't think I've watched it in like maybe 5 or 6 years because like it still doesn't hold up. Like it doesn't compare to Remember the Titans for me, which in a very similar fashion is like this team didn't have that many close games. They kind of rolled through everybody, but it's a Disney film, so let's make it a little more dramatic to get the audience into it. Both fantastic movies. That's our movie talk today. Whatever. Let's get to the weekend real quick. We're recording this on a Sunday morning before Super Wildcard Weekend Day 2 kicks off, and we both want to finish this up in like an hour so we can actually watch the games, not have them silently on in the background. This weekend, wild in many senses. The football games last night, obviously, but then college basketball yesterday. Like it seemed like a ranked team could not buy a win. Like there was none of them were winning yesterday. I don't remember who broke that streak. Well, Kentucky did, but they were playing a ranked team too, so you kind of lose there. But it's been a fun basketball season so far. And I was saying this in our podcast episode with just me last week, that it's one of the more competitive seasons we've seen in college basketball. All the teams at the top have been dropped down a peg at least once this season, whether it's Duke, Gonzaga, now Baylor losing twice in a row. It's been a very fun season, and it's only going to continue on from here, at least in my opinion, Matt.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And like you said, I think it's almost a shame that there was playoff football yesterday because I think it overshadowed a little bit just how much went on in college basketball. And a lot of people tend to wait until March, especially the casual fan, to really get into it. But like you said, there's been so much to follow this season. So many people wanted to see how Gonzaga would respond after last season. How would Baylor try to defend their title? And those are just for some of these top teams. There's I've been trying to do my own bracketology throughout the season, and trying to forecast those teams, which it's always kind of difficult to forecast the last 8, 10, 12 or so teams in those last couple seed lines, but it just seems like it's wide open this year. And that's not just a testament to, how competitive things are, but just maybe how there's different storylines that develop, whether that's the weakness of the ACC or some of these stronger mid-majors that may have a more realistic shot to get in there than in years past. So it's really interesting to follow. And to me, there's never a bad night of college basketball right now.
To put this in perspective, there were a handful of teams, and really actually a handful. I believe I counted up 5 just now. Baylor dropping their game against Oklahoma State. You had Northwestern beating Michigan State, who was 10th. Arkansas beating LSU. Texas, Iowa State, I won't count that because that's 2 ranked teams going up against each other. Same with Tennessee, Kentucky. Texas Tech dropping one to Kansas State. Matt Majinski's Seton Hall Pirates. He was really high on them this year, and they're coming down to earth a little bit, dropping one to Marquette. And then Alabama dropping one to Mississippi State. Again, conference opponents. It's going to be a bit harder to beat them on a nightly basis, but it's just unpredictable. And that's why we love the game of college basketball. Let's focus on 2 teams in particular that took a loss or losses this weekend. And that's Baylor. That's USC. They were the 2 last undefeated teams in the nation coming into this week. Baylor now has lost twice, both at home, both the conference opponents, first Texas Tech, then Oklahoma State last night. At first, AP number 1 ranked team to drop 2 consecutive home games in a week where they were ranked number 1. Bump in the road, maybe, though Baylor had one of these last season as well, right towards the end before the tournament started after a COVID pause that then kind of sparked them on their tournament run and eventual championship as well. How worried are you that it happening this early in the season is a sign of maybe the Bears aren't as good of a team as we maybe think they should be or will be going into the later stages of the season?
Certainly I think there's I don't know if panic's the right word, but it's definitely one of those things where when you lose to it or like that, especially at home where you're supposed to hold home court, maybe you start to maybe take a step back and say, okay, what did we struggle with? And then, but I think it's almost better to happen now as long as it's fixable. Right. If you look back and you go through and you look at film and you say, hey, all right, here's some things maybe we need to improve on or sharpen up, you can improve that and get yourself back into a point where, Baylor was starting to look like Baylor by the time they got on a roll in the NCAA tournament. So if you let it happen early, and of course you never wanted to let it happen, but if it happens earlier, you can make those corrections. Whereas if a team starts to kind of backslide towards the end, you've seen that snowball where all of a sudden you think this team that was once a national title contender maybe isn't where they need to be going into the most important part of the season. So I wouldn't worry yet. There's plenty of time. Probably the most worrisome thing, if anything else, is that the Big 12 is a league without nights off, as we saw yesterday. Kansas State takes down Texas Tech. They were 0-4, I think, before going into that game in the Big 12. Oklahoma State, even though they're banned from the postseason, it doesn't keep them from playing hard and, ruining some other seasons. And even you've got teams like TCU and Oklahoma that aren't getting as much love playing an overtime game yesterday, both really right on the bubble. So, you have a league that realistically, if Oklahoma State wasn't banned, maybe has 8 teams that could get in this year.
Yeah, the Big 12 known for throwing punches at each other, both literally and metaphorically. If you remember that last year, that was Kansas State, Kansas, right? Or was it? It was one of the purple teams that
it was
throwing punches at each other.
Kansas State, Kansas, because D'Souza is now at Chattanooga.
Yes, he is. Well, in terms of USC, then the Pac-12 is often overlooked, kind of, I feel like, at least in every sport, because they have a lot of schools out there that have higher people that there's this conception that they're maybe a little bit higher in terms of academic standards as well as athletic standards. You have Stanford out there, UCLA, USC, all fantastic schools in their own right. And you don't see a lot of those teams get deep into the tournament. I think the two last Pac-12 teams to make to the Final Four were UCLA last year, and then that Tyler Dorsey Oregon team. Or wait, no, did Oregon State, were they in the Elite Eight or the Final Four this past year? That was the
Elite Eight.
Okay, so they were close. You have a Pac-12 team that kind of like shocks everybody once in a while, in last year's case too. And then you have every once in a while the Pac-12 team that's like really good, like an Oregon with Dylan Brooks and Tyler Dorsey. The Pac-12, in my opinion, doesn't get a lot of respect. Don't know why. They have their moments. I'm looking at you, ACC and SEC folks, maybe even the Big Ten a little bit, though. The Big Ten, I feel like, doesn't get as much respect as they should either. So I'm a big Big Ten, big Pac-12 fan. Even if the teams are like too late to watch, especially where I am, like it's midnight here when they're at halftime, and it's like, let's screw this. I'm not going to watch these teams play because I just can't. I would get no sleep. But USC, similar question. They drop one to Stanford. Is there any team out of the Pac-12 that you think can really make a run in the tournament this year? Like, I guess USC would be one since they got up to number 5, but I honestly have no idea. Like I said, I live on the East Coast. I don't get to watch a lot of Pac-12 basketball. That's kind of like Ariel Putterman's thing, or the guys that are in the Midwest right now can do that a lot easier than we can.
Yeah, to that point real quick, I was trying so hard to watch BYU San Francisco last night, but 11 p.m. tip-off here on the East Coast, and I didn't make it. I had to wake up and see the final score. But yeah, I mean, one team you didn't mention there, Arizona. They're potentially primed to be number 1 this week, depending on whether you think they should jump Gonzaga or not, with everybody else losing. And so I think it's the Wildcats. Tommy Lloyd's come in there in year 1 and really made them almost a 180 from what was there before. And so it's got to be Arizona. Are they overrated? I think time will tell. They haven't started with the toughest Pac-12 schedule yet for the teams that are a little bit more competitive so far. But you got to like what you see out there, especially with Benedict Mathurin has really kind of taken the lead there as their best player. And so, and I don't think we should be surprised if you look at what Gonzaga has built up over the years, and that's where Tommy Lloyd came from. He's going to bring something similar. He's going to put his own style on it, but he knows what it takes to win and win consistently. And it's not taking them long at all to get that going in Arizona. So I think it's got to be Arizona, especially when you see what UCLA and USC did this past week. And that's not to say that either of those teams could make their own runs, but I think we learned a little bit more about them, and we're going to learn more about Arizona moving forward, but I think they're the team.
Arizona, one of those teams that's made the Pac-12 kind of like the forgotten conference because of how they used to be really good, and they would always lose in like the first round. They got absolutely blasted by Buffalo. The year they had DeAndre Ayton, or really probably shouldn't have had DeAndre Ayton. Everyone catches my drift here. We like poking fun at teams that have, not followed the rules a little bit. Final question on this topic, though. We've seen teams go undefeated pretty deep into the season. Wichita State, Kentucky. But it's been almost 40 years now since a team has gone wire to wire. Indiana, the last team to do that, 75-76. In your opinion, what makes going unbeaten so hard in this day and age of college basketball?
I don't think it changes whether it was 40 years ago or now that you have to be on your game every night. But that's hard to do over 30 to 35 games. The schedule has expanded over the years in terms of how many games teams play, and that includes conference tournaments. Off nights always happen. Injuries happen. In the past 2 years, you've had COVID pauses. You brought up Baylor last year. They didn't look the same when they first came back from that. And, Duke's kind of been the same way this year, now that they were undefeated at that point. But, you have these teams that have come off the pauses that don't look the same as they get back into themselves. And so, not to mention, you're getting everyone's best shot. The deeper you get, you're the game they circle. And, even more so, if you're, let's say, 28, 29-0 or whatever it is by February into March, not to say that you don't have much to play for, but when you get into those conference tournaments and you have, let's say, an Oregon State in the Pac-12, for example, who they know they're not going to make the tournament unless they win this thing. And then they go out and get hot and motivate themselves. And, so maybe they're going to play with more motivation in a conference tournament. And so whatever you have, the way that the scheduling formats change, the fact that you have to be consistent over 35 games potentially if you're playing into the NCAA tournament late, that's tough. And I think the second thing is that the gap is shrinking. There are still cupcakes out there, but it's not as easy to just schedule as many maybe smaller conference teams or mid-major teams, even early on, where it's supposed to be a tune-up game, and now you're leaving the gym losing by 2 or at a buzzer beat or whatever it is because maybe you overlooked that team. So I think those are the two biggest things. The gap is shrinking in competition, both from the smaller teams to the bigger teams, but even the teams that in power conferences maybe aren't considered as good. Northwestern, while they're not the greatest team out there in the Big Ten in history, shown that they've been more competitive recently, right? They got over that slide with not making the NCAA tournament. And then you look yesterday, they upset Michigan State. So you have even the teams at the bottom level of those conferences, Oregon State, who they're playing better more consistently.
You can also see these smaller tier teams playing up in competition, scheduling big boys so they can get that experience. There have been plenty of them. And while they haven't necessarily won those games, they've performed admirably in them. We move on to the stories you may have missed over the course of this past week, starting with the aforementioned Oregon Ducks. Dana Altman getting his 700th career win in upset fashion over number 3 UCLA, another ranked team falling because what else is new in college basketball? 84-81 in overtime, the 4th win in a row for the Ducks. They're now 10-6, unless they played yesterday and I missed that.
They took down USC.
Oh, yesterday. They did. That's right. Okay, so they're now 5 wins in a row, 11-6. They swept Southern California. Congratulations to the Ducks. Altman quietly been one of the better coaches in college basketball, very consistent. I feel like we don't talk about him a lot though. I don't know if that's, again, a Pac-12 thing or if that's just we have all these big name coaches and he's just been steady Eddie, super consistent, and his team comes up big in the tournament. But otherwise, he kind of flies under the radar.
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged Pac-12 thing. The perception isn't there, as we've already mentioned. And then the teams that you always expect to come out of the Pac-12, UCLA, Arizona, are always, even if they're not going to be great, they still get the spotlight because everybody wants them to be. So you have Dana Altman here, who's been at Oregon, hasn't won any less than 21 games in his time at Oregon, 1 Final Four, 1 Elite Eight, 3 Sweet 16s, and 2 of those came as a 12 seed. double-digit Pac-12 wins in all but one season there at Oregon. So how can you not be impressed at what he's done? We like to talk about consistent programs with coaches. Not going to say he's like Jay Wright, but we picture that Jay Wright keeps Villanova consistent. I think Dana Altman does the same thing in Oregon.
Well, from a coach to a player who was consistent in his time, albeit at, again, a program that, knowing what we know now, probably shouldn't have been as consistent. Louisville will retire Russ Smith's number 2 jersey. There is a guy wearing it right now. Unfortunately, he won't be able to wear it in the later years of his career. I don't even have his name written down because I don't think he's that relevant. No offense, man, whoever you are. Russ Dickulus. That was also just, yeah, that's a great name for him. He was very fun to watch. Extreme. That was the year. Well, let me go through his accolades first. Only Louisville player with 1,800 points, 350 assists, and 250 steals. Top 10 all-time points, three-pointers made, steals, made free throws. And a member of that vacated championship team. Emphasis on the word vacated, though I don't think he had anything to do with that. He is the 5th player to have his jersey number retired at Louisville. And despite what that team now hasn't done because of the vacated championship and everything, that was a solid team. So good.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was a big part of that, obviously. And, I think one thing that maybe gets lost in all that is that he was doing that in the Big East, the old Big East, which was not to say this Big East isn't as good, but I do think there's a missing level.
You can say it. It's not as good.
It's not. And so he was doing that in the old Big East and being able to put those numbers like that. And I think it's just a shame that he didn't get to finish 4 years there. Louisville had that weird year in the American Athletic Conference his senior year. And so who knows how much higher he could have risen on top of all the other numbers that you listed. He could have risen in Big East conference history.
Yeah, it does. There is a big red flag with him, though. The fact he needed Tim Henderson coming off the bench to help them upset then Cinderella story, Wichita State Shockers. But Tim Henderson, one of the greatest, just cameo appearances in a game that mattered the most. Everybody's
Brendon, was that scripted?
No, it was not scripted. No, not scripted. That is something that, again, they have written up before because Ali shooting his free throws underhand in Hoosiers they've already scripted that thing out. You never know what's going to happen. But that was I think Luke Hancock had 3 fouls in the first 10 minutes of the game. Gorgie Jeng. These are all guys that are bench warmers in the NBA right now, I'm pretty sure. Peyton Siva, I think, had a foul. He was Peyton Siva, I think, was the only guy who did not foul a lot in that game. And Tim Henderson's just yeah, I got you guys, and drops 6 points in the first 2 possessions he's on the floor. It's what the hell is going on here? But anyway, yeah. Next up, and this is more your territory, Murray State decides to go to Missouri Valley in July. Will become the league's 11th member effective July 1st. They're the 5th program to leave the Ohio Valley over the last 2 years, including Belmont, who they'll be joining in the Missouri Valley. Austin P.I. I still don't know how to pronounce that.
It is P. It is P because they had one of the best hashtags in college basketball the last 2 years. Let's go P.
Well, I mean, I think the other favorite hashtag was for Oral Roberts last year, but I don't think we can say that on a podcast. Let's be real here. Eastern Kentucky, Jacksonville State, the other two that have left that conference. Another thing I mentioned over the course of our last podcast episode, now talent and quality programs from smaller conferences making their way up into more competitive ones to try and increase their chances of making the tournament. And it's leaving all these other conferences sort of in limbo with how they're going to be able to survive. Is it going to be very top heavy? There's just a team that dominates it for years and years to come, or what? I mean, as the mid-major guy, that one of the 2 mid-major guys that we know and love here at CBB Review, what do you see as the state of mid-major conferences with all of this flux and turnover?
It's very much similar to the early 2010s where it was kind of the similar thing where the the AAC is getting developed, and you have all these teams shifting places, and you have teams like Butler that are looking to move. They now from the Horizon League all the way to the Big East here, and they've become an established Big East team in the new revamped version of it. And so you have maybe this second wave of teams that have shown they can win consistently at a smaller level. And from a Murray State and Belmont perspective, just looking at those two, um, unfortunately for them, as good as they've been in at-large potential over the last couple of years, the OVC is routinely one of the worst leagues by metrics. When you talk about Ken Palm and the other different metrics that evaluate leagues, the OVC is right down there with leagues like the MEAC and the SWAC, who are consistently in the play-in game every year in the tournament. And so you have a league that isn't helping you. It doesn't do you much good to blow out a Southeast Missouri State or an Eastern Illinois 2 times a year, because it's not going to help your numbers. And so being able to move to a league with the Missouri Valley, who didn't waste any time, they lose Loyola Chicago to the Atlantic 10, and they come in and scoop up 2 more teams that have been just as consistent, maybe not won as many games, but at least just as consistent. And so it really does leave these lower leagues, the Ohio Valley, now those metrics are going to drop them even further. And you're left to replace with teams maybe from Division II, maybe from other lower leagues in Division I, that they're not probably going to boost you all that much. Maybe the only silver lining is that teams that haven't had a sniff of getting to the NCAAs will have the door open for them. The Ohio Valley is a league that's brought in some teams from Division II of recent. SIU Edwardsville is one that comes to mind that joined them. And so now these teams that maybe, how are they ever going to get through the Belmont Murray State 1-2 punch? Maybe they get a chance to at least make an appearance. But it's a scramble. The MEAC is another league because the SWAC took teams from them. The Big South has taken teams from them. So you have a few leagues. The Southland, they've got to figure out what they want to do. Or do they want to replace with D2? Do they want to, I say steal, but that's kind of what it is at this point, take teams. And I'll be honest, my own league that I love, the Southern Conference with Wofford, their profile has risen, and I've heard things where they're trying to look into maybe like a William & Mary out of the CAA because James Madison left. The Colonials start to be a little bit of flux. So you have these teams that they have to figure out, are they in a better position where they are now, or do they need to make a move? And it leaves conferences to scramble, because it's not like you get 3 years on this. It's, hey, they're joining in July, figure it out.
And finally, the news dropping yesterday that former Kentucky basketball coach Joby Hall passed away at the age of, and let me make sure I get this right, 93. Won college basketball titles at Kentucky as a player and a coach. RIP to him. Replaced Adolph Rupp, and there is no easy way to say that that's an easy job to take, replacing already a Kentucky legend, but another Kentucky legend gone. Rest in peace to Joby Hall. We'll have a little bit more on him later in the episode. For now, though, we'll move on to our second topic, which is in no way forgotten, in no way underscored at all, because it's just so constant and we're kind of numb to it at this point. And I preface this by saying, well, by giving you this number, 140 or more, most likely more. 140 programs have had some sort of COVID pause. This was as of, I think, Monday when I looked up the statistics on this. So for all I know, could be less than that right now, could be more than that right now. Most likely less, because most teams have had a pause and come back and have been kind of stable since then. NCAA decided to update their COVID guidelines to the CDC's, which is like what literally everybody is doing right now. Like, I work in local news. Literally everybody is just following the CDC's guidelines and saying, yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for that. We all know what they are. Fully vaccinated individuals can get a booster within 2 months of the J&J, 5 of the Pfizer, 6 of Moderna. We'll skip through all of the like technical speak and medical speak because we're sports guys. But it seems less and less likely that we're going to have a lot of COVID stoppages in the sport now, because variants that we're seeing aren't nearly as effective against people who are healthy and vaccinated and boosted, which is what all these players are. Literally the healthiest people out of their age group or maybe even in the world. And they're kind of like in their own bubble already because Division I college athletes are like they're practicing and playing so much, especially during the regular season. They're on the go a lot. Like they can't afford to like really do anything outside of it. Like they're doing schoolwork on the bus or the plane or whatever. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of COVID stoppages, but what is the potential? Excuse me, I just burped there. Oh my goodness. What is the potential impact of a possible COVID stoppage or COVID pause? I know we saw a team have to forfeit out of the tournament last season. Is that even an option this year? Like, because I would assume they're going to have the tournament spread out again, maybe not just in one bubble city.
Yeah, I mean, everything that I've seen so far, the NCAA is sticking to their old format. 8 locations for the first and second rounds, 4 for the regionals, and then of course the Final Four, and a national championship in one spot. So they're planning on pressing forward, and I feel like this time last year, it was close to this time last year, they had to announce all of these different things, the changes. They needed them in place. We're a year further in the future with vaccines and boosters and all these different things that can help in testing. So we've taken another step forward in terms of how we can handle things. And the NCAA, I think they were still a little late to the party with all these changes. Because that was one of the biggest things. Twitter can be a very toxic place sometimes, but you see all these arguments about games being canceled or postponed, and why, because they're healthy college athletes, and why are we testing healthy college athletes, and so on and so forth. And regardless of your views, the bottom line is if there's guidelines in place, teams can't go against them. And so the fact that the NCAA finally has updated them, I think shows that they're able to adapt, even if they took a little longer. And if there's one thing that they want to protect, is the March Madness. And so they will do what it takes to make sure that happens. You saw that last year. It was unfortunate that we had VCU with the one team that had to bow out without playing. So I think they're going to do everything they can to make sure that's not going to happen. I don't know if that means setting up bubbles in each location, similar to where they had everything in Indiana last year. But I just can't see it happening unless it's something where, the whole team is positive. And if you want to look at one plus side, there's never a plus side of testing positive or getting COVID, but with so many teams getting it early and maybe getting it through their program, there's less of a chance that the teams are going to deal with that further down the road.
You're right about that. That's the topic of our question of the week for you guys. Matt did say Twitter is a toxic place, and yes, it can be. If you'd like to get away from that, though, we really suggest that you come look at our Twitter page at CBB Review. Our Instagram page as well. I think that's all we have in terms of social media. Maybe we have a TikTok or a Facebook. I don't know. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram. See our articles or stalk us in our personal lives if that's kind of your thing. I don't know. I hope that's not your thing, but if you want to, that by all means, just don't creep me out and hop in my DMs or something like that. Our question of the week, though. Will we see COVID-related cancellations and or forfeitures in postseason play, whether it's conference tournaments or the NCAAs, the NITs, all the national tournaments? That's our question of the week. Reach out to us on Twitter. Tell us yes or no, or maybe, or hell, I don't know. Just let's play basketball. Any answer works. We're all good with that. Let's review now our top performances or plays of this past week. I'll just bring out the obvious one right now. Last night, we had our obligatory early season dunk of the year candidate from Wagner. I don't know where that came from. I was cutting an NFL game last night because I do part-time work for them. And I saw this on my timeline, dunk of the year. And it was like the not worst quality video, but like kind of down there in terms of quality video. And I didn't see the guy windmilled it until like the 5th time watching it through. Again, don't know his name, because I just didn't know his name. But the Wagner guy, it's on our Twitter. Go check it out. It's a really good dunk, especially in a game. Like, not a lot of people try that in a college basketball game. But great to see that. That was my top play of the week.
Yeah, I guess I'll come with two, and of course it's probably again it's mid-major level, so that's my
Dude, that's
breadbasket. But
okay. Show them some
yeah,
love.
the first one, and again I don't have a name on this for this one, so but Coppin State and Morgan State, crosstown rivals in the city of Baltimore, and Coppin State hit a half-court buzzer beater to win, knock off Morgan State. That was a back and forth game all the time, and I don't think it gets much better than do that to your rival, much less any game, but to do that to your rival. So there's that. And then Darius Mcgee, our highest point total of the season yesterday at Liberty, scored 48 points in a 78-75 win over Florida Gulf Coast. 64% shooting, 8 of 14 from three, perfect 8 for 8 from the free throw line. And in a 3-point win, Liberty needed all 48 of them.
That they did. In your second one, you said you had two. Oh, wait, that was.
But that was the second one. Liberty.
That was
the
second one. Jesus, I'm so off today. Again, I was up until midnight cutting this Bills game last night, which they did not need all 47 points they scored. I can tell you.
Wasn't much to cut. Just every.
Oh
touchdown.
no, you have no idea. Like literally, the first quarter, I had so. This is the notebook that I used to cut. That's how many plays I had to cut. We were like down here by the end of the first quarter. So the rest of that's the entire rest of the game. And I was just like, bro, I cannot keep up with this right now. It was a wild game. Those are our top performances of the week. Now on to the 3-point play. We have the champion of the 3-point play from last season. We haven't really kept track of scores this season.
But we do know that Matt Baginski's last.
Yes, always. He is eternally last. I think what I may do this season is just literally bring on everybody. And if you get a question wrong, you're just out. So whoever lasts the longest. But yeah, I said we would mention more about Coach Joe B. Hall as we went on through the episode. And this is where we will honor the legacy of Coach Joe B. Hall. Matt Waldman probably not going to do well at this because, in his words, not mine, I don't know that much about Kentucky basketball. I apologize. We'll start with one of the easier ones. The era that Coach Hall was coaching in, there were a lot of legendary coaches alongside him at various highly prestigious programs. Coach Hall got to coach against this man in this coach's final game ever was in an NCAA championship game against Kentucky, led by Joe B. Hall. Who is that coach?
I feel like it's got to be John Wooden.
That is correct. Yes. Like I said, I had to switch up this trivia at like the last minute because I saw this and I was like, damn, I really need to give this guy his due because he's a coaching legend, even though Adolph Rupp is kind of like the face of Kentucky basketball in the 60s and really maybe even the early 70s too. And then you have Calipari now. You had Bettino earlier. There are so many good coaches, and Joe B. Hall kind of gets forgotten by, especially our generation, I feel like. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's the older faces. I'm thinking maybe John Wooden might be one of the only ones that doesn't get forgotten, but all these other guys, as we get further and further away.
Yeah. Well, speaking of his job at Kentucky, we're moving backwards in time. We're in reverse. So these questions are getting older as we get older here. So obviously, Coach Hall replacing Adolph Rupp after he retired. What was the reason that Adolph Rupp had to retire when he did?
I feel like this can go one of two ways. Was it the integration of the SEC?
It was not, no. Apparently there was a mandatory retirement age of 70, which I am shocked by that would have been a thing back then.
All right.
Wild. I read that this morning and I was like, what? This man retired at 70 because he had to? Dang. Okay. And then finally, we obviously know Coach Hall went to Kentucky. Did not graduate from there, though. He played at one other definitely smaller college, very much so a smaller college. Like now they're a D3 school in today's day and age. He also played for a quote unquote professional basketball team. Name both.
Let's see. Well, I'm gonna take a stab here on the college team. I'm gonna say Georgetown, but in Kentucky, not Georgetown that we know, but Georgetown, Kentucky. And then as far as quote unquote professional, maybe he was a Globetrotter for a few years. That's the only thing I can think of.
Well, you were right about one of them. And it definitely wasn't the college team. Yes, he was a Harlem Globetrotter on a European tour, actually, just for a bit, literally like a cup of tea with the team. He finished his collegiate basketball career at the University of the South, otherwise known as Sewanee, which I've heard has a beautiful campus, a very lovely campus. My brother's school's biggest rival. But yeah, Joe B. Hall, R.I.P. That's his legacy, guys. Like he's fantastic man from everything that I've heard from the big names who I will have never had a chance to talk to. I just listen to them on TV. But, you know, it's all good. Like we also, for game picks, we're doing something different. I'm literally pulling one off each day of the schedule because there are just too many good games to count. I didn't want to put in like 60 games to pick. So I am literally going to close my eyes. And I'm going to move the mouse slowly down the screen on each day. And Matt Waldman's going to tell me when to stop and we're going to pick that game. All right.
That sounds good.
Here we go. Moving it down.
All right, go ahead and stop.
Okay. Well, I think this one's going to be an easy pick. Notre Dame visiting the Bison of Howard.
I will go ahead and take the visiting Irish in that one.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. All right. Moving on to Tuesday. Closing the eyes, moving it down.
All right, stop.
Oh, this is a good one. The Davidson Wildcats at Virginia Commonwealth.
And that's one of the games I've pegged for mid-majors to watch this week.
Subtle. There we go.
Yeah.
You know how to stop a mouse, my friend.
I'm gonna have to stick with Davidson. I think that they're clearly the best team in the A10, and they've played some tougher games already in the league and close games, and they know how to win close. So I'm gonna roll with them until they prove me otherwise.
Alrighty, Wednesday the 19th. Here we go.
All right, stop.
Number 12 LSU, number 24 Alabama, at least until the rankings change and Alabama's not ranked anymore. That's what the show's right now.
And this is at Alabama, I'm assuming here.
It is at Alabama.
Crimson Tide. I'll still take LSU. Up until yesterday, they had looked really solid, and their only loss, I believe, was to Auburn, who, again, you can make a case for number one come around tomorrow. So I'll go with LSU.
Alrighty, moving on to Thursday, the 20th. The weather should be a little bit warmer here on the East Coast by that time. Of course, it probably.
I'm not here, so I'm told, but not in my neck of the woods. Yeah.
Alrighty, let's move the mouse down. My eyes are closed. Anytime now.
All right, stop. Yeah, I'll stop. I know there's a lot of games on Thursday, so I'm trying to get a little deeper here.
Well, you mentioned Silvio De Sousa. Landed on Chattanooga at UNC Greensboro.
Oh, yeah. So this is right in my home territory here with
yes, it is.
The SoCon. I'll have to stick with Chat, although they are missing David Jean-Baptiste right now, their second leading scorer, and that showed in a surprising loss to Western Carolina last week. So I'm hesitant because I want to see how Chattanooga can play without him in more than two games, but they are the better team, so I'll take them.
Friday the 21st, a very limited slate. Definitely not a Thursday kind of basketball day, but here we go.
If you're sorting by just the time when they tip off, I think we'll take the first. I'm
sorting by Division I.
Right, so, and I think they usually sort by the time they tip off. So take the first one if it's the one I think it is.
Toledo at Ohio.
Yes. I tell you,
The rivalry
it's interesting because
on CBS Sports Network. The Rockets of Toledo at the Jason Preston List Ohio Bobcats on CBS Sports.
If this is a shameless plug, it might be, but we do an under the radar top 25 along with our normal top 25 here at CBB Review. Myself and the other mid-major guru, Matt Carner, take the lead along with some other great folks out there in the college basketball world. And he messaged me yesterday. He said, hey, did you get an email from Toledo basketball about, what they've been doing this year? I said, I did. So we have not ranked Toledo yet in the basketball.
And they were obviously very upset if they emailed you guys.
Yeah, so I've been watching that game. Ohio has been in my top 10 for a while now in the mid-major, under the radar top 25. And so really curious to see Toledo's looking really good. And I kind of want to roll with them, even though it's at Ohio. I think Toledo's the hotter team. Ohio hasn't played, whether it's their own pause or somebody else's on pause. They've missed a few games. So I'm going to roll with the Rockets here.
All righty, we're moving on to Saturday, the 22nd, and I'm going to close my eyes. Here we go.
All right, stop.
We got the Ivy League in here now. Oh, baby. Princeton at Dartmouth.
Ooh. I'm going to roll with the Tigers.
$16 to be at Dartmouth for the game.
So it's quite a drive.
Won't even have fans there.
It's quite a drive to New Hampshire if you really want to make it.
Yeah.
I'll roll with Princeton. Dartmouth has been a little bit more competitive this year, but Princeton's the team to beat right now in the Ivy League.
And then finally, Sunday, and then we'll get to your favorite pick of the week, whatever it may be. Short slate on Sunday. Here we go. All
right, stop. We'll just make it quick here.
I'm not going to pick that one because I know you have no idea who one of these teams are. So let's do it again.
Are you telling me it's Georgia Tech's opponent?
Yes. That was what it was going to be, but I'm not letting you pick that. That's too easy.
All right. I'll stop.
Ooh. This is a nice little matchup. Number 17, Xavier at Marquette. Marquette off that upset.
Yeah, Marquette's playing much better under Shaka Smart than people, I think, gave him credit for coming into the year. I like Marquette to hold at home. I do. Xavier's a solid team, but I think the Golden Eagles are playing with a mission to get to the tournament this year.
And finally, your gotta have it. If I don't, I'll smack myself in the face. Pick, where this is new for this episode. I'm just springing this on you now. Your favorite pick of this week.
Are you going to get upset if it's a homer pick?
I mean, yeah, I was hoping you'd be a little less basic than picking Wofford over whoever, but if you want to, I'm fine.
All right, fine. I won't go Wofford over Furman, even though that's a huge rivalry.
That's a really big game. Actually, you know what? Give us your analysis on Wofford versus Furman real quick. I mean,
Wofford, Furman.
They're both very good teams. They've both been pretty good for a while.
They have, you obviously know I watch Wofford basketball pretty faithfully.
Also, let me just say this real quick. Ariel Putterman, I know you're shaking in your chair because we've talked about mid-majors today. Shut up. No one cares about your rock, chalk, Jayhawk BS.
Now, it's funny on that topic real quick. I saw him tweet the other day about, I think it was Cleveland State. He watches the Horizon League kind of randomly. So he sent us in about Cleveland State playing somebody and then being impressive. And, I replied to him. I said, I didn't know Cleveland State played in the Big 12. But he never replied back to me. So
that man,
but yeah,
I love the guy, but he can't hack it in a Twitter fight, man. Here we are saying we're not toxic on Twitter, and Matt Waldman's just throwing out shots.
So getting back to Wofford Furman, look, Furman, real close game against Chattanooga yesterday. I don't think there's any doubt that they're the second best team in the SoCon. Wofford is a little bit under expectation so far. They lost Messiah Jones, their best player, arguably their best player, to a season-ending injury in December, and they've been a different team since. They're a young team. Turnovers have been an issue. Sharing the ball has been an issue, and their losses, those are the numbers that speak out the most. So it's a home game. It's a rivalry game. Typically, you can throw the numbers out the window. And quite frankly, if Chattanooga is going to run away with the league, second place is up for grabs, and this is going to go a long way towards that. I can't not pick the Terriers. Sorry for the double negative in there. So I'm going to go Wofford, but it wouldn't surprise me if Furman walks in there and wins as well.
All right, then your other gotta have it pick of the week, since I don't want to end on the homer pick.
That's fair. I just looked at the schedule not too long ago, and for the mid majors, as I said, trying to recall what I had. That you put me on the spot here. I wasn't ready for this.
Hey man, so, I roll deep with my questioning here. I keep you on edge. We want this to be authentic. Like I said, this isn't the movie.
That's okay.
It's not all scripted.
So is it gotta have it as I'm like saying this is the game where this team's gonna win?
You're basically saying this is gonna happen.
Oh, this is gonna happen.
You guarantee. You hit that button and Charles Barkley's dancing behind you. Guarantee this is going to happen.
I'll guarantee this. And San Francisco will upset Gonzaga Thursday. They just got rescheduled. They just got rescheduled because San Francisco knows how important that game is. San Francisco knocks off Gonzaga.
Whoa. Okay. That's a pretty lofty guarantee for the first one. I love it. Okay.
I'll either look really smart or really stupid.
I mean, hey, we all look really stupid at some point, right? Matt Majinski more so than most. Just about done here on the review. We're going to track back a little bit here in our overtime. I meant to say this when we were talking about Dana Altman. The only thing as consistent as him in Oregon is how sick their floor looks with the pine trees on it. Our overtime today, I have none put down on the rundown, but I thought of that when I was putting the finishing touches on it today. I'm going to go best floor, worst floor in NCAA history. The worst one was when Memphis had their entire paint area and the free throw half circle colored in blue, and it was the only blue on the floor. It was gray everywhere else. My mom texted me saying it looks like a certain body part. And I was like, I haven't watched this team play. I'm going to look it up and see. And it did. Again, can't really say it while we're recording this podcast because we like to be very family friendly here. But I think you know what I mean when I say the paint area and that half circle, what it looks like. That was my worst. Oregon and Long Beach State, I feel do their that basketball floor very well. There's also another one that's a skyline on it. I don't know if that's maybe MSG during the Big East tournament or if that's an actual team that has a skyline imprinted on their floor with a different shaded color of hardwood.
Well, that's becoming more popular too with a lot of teams in big cities. I believe UNLV now has Las Vegas skyline on there. But yeah, those teams that are in larger cities, so that's becoming more popular. The other thing that I like, and it's maybe a little simple, but I typically enjoy the teams that have the state outline around center court. That's something that I think is, because it is.
State has that, don't they?
Ohio State does. I think Ohio does now too. It's becoming more popular with the teams that directly represent the state within their school name. And I just think it's nice. I think it's cool.
Do you have a worst floor design?
I vaguely remember that Memphis one that you're mentioning, and I remember thinking that it didn't look good as well. That's the one that comes to mind right off the bat. I can't think of too many others right now. I mean, I know it's not basketball, but I think the Central Arkansas used to have a purple and gray football field, and I know Eastern Washington's well known for their red one, and I think that's okay. But yeah, the Central Arkansas football field, and it's not basketball, but that's one that's a little for me. So
I will say, and this is weird coming from me because it's my home state. Mizzou's like the way the court just looks like on TV doesn't look great. And like I've played on that court in like a summer camp in high school, and it looks a lot better in person than it does if you're watching it on TV. I don't know why. It just doesn't feel right to me. Then again, not a lot about Mizzou basketball has felt right to anybody over the past 5 years. So what do I know?
One more
jab.
court. I would say one more. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
Louisville has the old school bird Duncan right now in their midcourt logo, which I also think is really nice. So
throwbacks are always really good. Do you think that Miami will bring back the old Hurricane?
I think they should. I think that retro logos are kind of coming back in. The teams really throw, at least if they don't do it throughout the majority of the season, they start to do at least 1 or 2 games like that. So I think they should.
All right. I was going to end it off on a jab, but we ended it off on a very retro note, which is appropriate for what we talked about today. We're older guys and we're experienced in this sort of thing. Thanks for joining us on the review. His name is Matt Waldman. I'm Brendon Hodges. Join us again next week when we talk about what's happened in college basketball from Monday the 17th to Sunday the 23rd. Yes, Sunday the 23rd. Until then, though, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you may find us. Watch us on YouTube. Go read our articles at cbbreview.com. It's been great having you, and take care. This has been The Review.